What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Of course, you know it's your boy B Hot Radio shouting. Hey, man, I got a legend stepping off in the building. I'm talking about the Fulton County Commissioner, Marvin Arrington Jr. What's good with it, boss?
Hey, what's up, B Hot? Glad to be here. Thank you for having me, brother.
Man, feeling good, feeling great. Now, I mean, Marvin, first of all, I had a chance to marinate on this documentary right here. This is definitely a life changer. I'm talking about BoLegsATL, the story of Marvin Arrington Sr., an Atlanta story on top of that. Break this down to me, boss.
Hey, it's the BoLegs, Marvin Arrington Sr., an Atlanta story. It's a rags to riches story of a boy from the projects whose mother was a maid that went on to integrate Emory Law School, serve on the Atlanta City Council, become president of Atlanta City Council, run for mayor, and serve as a judge on the largest bench in the state of Georgia, the Fulton County Superior Court.
What was it in Marvin that allowed him to be so doggone great, man? I mean, what was his ingredients that made him say, you know what, I could be the greatest of all time coming out of Grady homes?
I mean, I think, he just had a will and a determination to do better. Mm-hmm. In the documentary, he says he was hanging out with the boys, and one day he realized he didn't want to just hang out with the boys anymore. But I think it was really my grandmother, right? Mm-hmm. She was a maid. She worked for a lawyer.
My God. And
she came home and told my dad, "You gonna be a lawyer." And as a result, we wound up having 7 lawyers in the Arrington family.
Thanks to grandmama.
Thanks to grandmama being a maid for a lawyer.
My God. I mean, when y'all think about that, man, those humble beginnings to where everybody is in the family right now, how does that make grandma feel? How did grandma feel?
Oh, she was real proud. And, luckily we had some footage. We were able to get archives. And so we have interviews from her in the documentary.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, when we talk about Marvin Arrington, he came out of a time that Atlanta was segregated now. So, I mean, how was he able to get his education on and get to the point to where he could facilitate all of the changes that he was able to make?
Well, it was hard. He talks about it in the documentary. He went to 3 different elementary schools, E.R. Carter and others, and went to David T. Howard High School, but wound up graduating from Turner High School. And so segregation was very prevalent. But I think it also brought black people closer together. Black people were more cohesive, if you will, just because it was us against the world, right?
My God, yeah.
And then when he took office, so Dr. King got assassinated April of 1968. He ran for office in November of 1968.
Crazy.
Took office January 1969. When he got to City Hall, they still had separate water fountains for white people and colored people and separate bathrooms.
My God.
So you know what a young boy from Grady Homes did.
What'd he do?
He went straight to the white water fountain and said, I dare somebody to say something.
I ain't mad at him at all. But see, that's not the only systems that he was bucking. On the other side of the law thing, man, you was talking to me off air about that. Break that down to me.
Yeah, so he and Clarence Cooper were the first full-time black law students at Emory Law School.
Yeah.
There was another black man, Ted Knight, that actually was the first to graduate from Emory Law School in '65, but he graduated from the part-time night school program. And so they were the first 2 full-time graduates from Emory Law School. After graduating, you go to take the bar exam, and he couldn't pass the bar, and in fact, no blacks passed the bar.
My God.
And so he got with the ACLU, filed a lawsuit against the State Bar of Georgia so that blacks could be admitted to the State Bar and practice law. And, that's just crazy, right? Here's this guy that's graduated from law school, and he's suing all the lawyers in the state.
That's crazy.
And so, he sued. He said he just couldn't believe that, blacks that went to Harvard Law School, Yale Law School, all these other law schools from around the country, smart, and then no one could pass. And so he sued the State Bar so that he and other blacks could be law partners. But then even after that, he went down to file a paper for a client, and the clerk of the court wouldn't accept the paperwork from him. So then he got with Leroy Johnson, who was one of his mentors, state senator. Leroy Johnson was the first state senator elected since Reconstruction from the South in the state of Georgia. Leroy Johnson was a state senator, so Leroy Johnson had the cachet, and he took him down there and said, hey, take this boy's filings.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's why we say an Atlanta story, because there's so many more. The Leroy Johnson story needs to be told.
That's right.
Lonnie King was a student activist in the AUC. He was the one that convinced my dad to run for office in November of 1968.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many more. Lottie Watkins, Louise Watley, right?
Yeah.
There's just so many more people that have contributed to making Atlanta the Atlanta that it is today.
Okay, now, Marvin, when you think about your daddy and those times right there, what was it in the water that allowed all of those people that you were talking about stories to come together and have that camaraderie to make the city great? You see what I'm saying? No one man did it by himself, but how was everybody able to come together and congregate like that to really push the culture forward?
Well, I think they were intentional. I don't think it was by accident, but you're right. I think it was something in the water, something in the air, and frankly, I think it's partly due to the AU Center and the influx of students. You know, you got 5,000 to 10,000 students coming into Atlanta every year, and half of those students are leaving and half are staying every year, right?
Yeah.
And so that brain trust of students from all around the country, I think, is part of it. And when we talk about it in the story, you know, Joseph Lowry is like a block away from our house, and Shirley Franklin is 2 blocks away, and Andy Young is 3 blocks away, right? Hank Aaron is 2 blocks away,
Come on
right?
now.
And Keisha and Kasim are maybe 5 or 10 blocks away.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of like all right there together in Southwest Atlanta.
That's right.
But the one thing that we talk about in there, a lot of people don't know, is Mayor Ivan Allen at the time put up a roadblock to stop black people from going into Southwest Atlanta.
My God.
And so now Southwest Atlanta's all black, right?
Exactly. It's all black.
So God is good, but I think they were intentional. I think they were intentional about being inclusive.
Yeah.
I think that they were intentional about making sure that blacks, women, minorities had opportunities, and I think that's the difference. That is why we are where the Atlanta that we are today.
How did Senior feel as he started to see the city grow and what it became, especially entering the 96 Olympics time? From the 60s all the way up into them 90s, it was a lot of transformation going on in this city. Yeah. And after 96, it would never be the same again. So how did he feel about the growth in the city? And, you know, what were some of the things that he felt like needed to be going on at that time?
Well, I mean, I think he was involved in a lot of that stuff. He helped save the Atlanta Zoo. At the time, it was... At the time, it was the Atlanta Zoo. Now it's Zoo Atlanta, right?
That's right.
And so he came up with the Recreation Authority, got the city out of the business of operating the zoo, because the city doesn't really know how to operate a zoo, right? Yeah. So you bring in an operator to come in and operate it. But he helped with the Olympics. He was the vice chair of the Olympic Committee. Yeah. Helped with the bid to bring it here, and then also helped with making sure things happen. And again, they were intentional. The only people that got property outside of the state of Georgia was the AUC. Clark Atlanta got a stadium. Yeah. Morris Brown got a stadium. Yeah. Morehouse got a stadium. Yeah. So the black schools in the AU Center were the only virtual private entities that really benefited from the Olympics, right? Yeah. I'm sure there were other private entities, but directly and by the building of those facilities and stadiums. And so, again, they were just inclusive. They wanted to make sure that everyone was at the table, make sure that black businesses were being supported. Yeah. I remember the story about when they were redoing the airport and they needed people, and Maynard said, "Well, we know how to lay we know how to lay concrete. We can do all the runways if nothing else. We're gonna make sure that there are blacks that are included." And he served on the city council under Maynard. he was actually elected 4 years prior to Maynard. Maynard was elected in 72, took office in 73. And so he was elected 68, 4 years before Maynard, worked as Maynard's floor leader through 81 on the city council, then ran for president of city council in 81, served as city council president for 16 years from 81 through 97.
Yeah.
So through the Olympics, he was mayor, and then that's when he ran. He was city council president, and that's when he ran for mayor.
Marvin, what was that like for you, seeing his trajectory growing up in the city of Atlanta and knowing that, you know, what we're talking about at this dinner table is going to affect everybody around here?
You know, it's interesting because as a child, he's just dad, right? Like, you know, you don't really see all of that stuff, or you don't really recognize it. I didn't really realize how special Atlanta was until I went away to school. I went to the University of Virginia undergrad, and I took a civil rights course from Julian Bond. And in that class, everyone that we were reading about, I knew their kids. I knew Andy, I knew Andrew Young and his children. I knew Ralph Abernathy and his children. I knew Joseph Lowry and his children. And so it was then that I realized how special Atlanta was. I had to go outside of the city to really appreciate how special and inclusive the city of Atlanta was.
Now, we were just talking about the 96 Olympics. How do you feel like the World Cup is going to impact Atlanta?
Oh, I think the World Cup is going to be amazing, and I'm real excited about it coming. And, you know, we as a people, as the city of Atlanta and Fulton County, we've got to get ready because these people are coming, and, you know, there's going to be some great opportunities for people to make some money. And we want to
be in on it.
And we want to be in on it. And I think we have, you know, I think Andre Dickens is doing a great job as mayor. I think he's going to make sure that they're inclusive. And Fulton County, we're making sure that there's inclusion. And so we're moving in the right direction for the most part, besides these 2 or 3 crazy people that want to start the city of Buckhead.
Oh, man. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, there's already a Buckhead, Georgia. First of all, there's already a Buckhead, Georgia, but the city of Buckhead, I think, is a bad idea. I think it's a real bad idea. And I think part of the reason we are the Atlanta that we are today is because we had this slogan, the city too busy to hate.
Facts.
And that is what made us different from Birmingham. That is what made us different from Mississippi.
That's right.
And that is why Atlanta is on a better trajectory than those other cities. And so, you know, I just think it's real important, and you know, we're in a good place because of that.
Now, for you, Marvin, what was it that made you go ahead and pick up civil service yourself, though, and, you know, become Fulton County Commissioner?
So, a funny story. I was in my HOA, in my subdivision, right? And I disagreed with some of the decisions that the HOA leaders were making.
Come on now.
And I said, hey, I think I can do better than them. I think I can do better than what they're doing. And so I decided to run for my HOA board. And once I got on the HOA board, I think a light went off in my head. And then I looked at the Fulton County Commission and I said, I think I can do better than them. And I said, I'm going to run for that. And so an open seat came up, and I ran for it, and I was blessed that the people chose me to represent them.
As the Fulton County Commissioner, I mean, what are some of your tasks and jobs that you have to deal with on a regular basis for those that don't know? Because, see, you know, for a brother such as myself, I just see Marvin Arrington Jr., Fulton County Commissioner, I'm like, okay, vote. You see what I'm saying? But I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, definitely. The average person doesn't even know, right? Only 5 to 8% of the people probably know who their commissioner is, who their state rep is, or who their state senator is, right? But as Fulton County Commissioner, we are responsible for setting the budget for Fulton County. We manage $1.3 billion a year of Fulton County tax money. 80% of that money comes from property taxes. And so you always want to make sure that you are doing the right thing. But of that 1.3 billion, we're spending $100 million on the jail. We're spending $100 million on the courts. We spend $100 million on health insurance for the over 5,000 employees that work for Fulton County, right? So there are a lot of big chunks, but we also spend money on the arts. We also spend money on senior programs and minor home repairs for seniors. But basically, we're responsible for setting the policy and the budget for Fulton County government.
How important do you feel like the arts are? Being that you grew up with the likes of Lil Jon, Vince, Cersei, all of the boys, Outkast, Backbone, everybody else, how do you feel like the arts played and impacted y'all's youth at the same time and, moving forward in the city?
Well, I think the arts are very important. And the great thing about the arts is it's a universal language, right? Black, white, Asian, straight, gay, Latino, whatever. The arts is a universal language. And so I come from, I guess, an arts background as an entertainment attorney, and had representing artists and musicians, and so I consider myself the arts commissioner. And so this year we just added an additional $1.7 million to our already $5 million arts budget for the year, and I'm trying to get it up even more, right? But like during COVID, we also made money available for artists and arts organizations, because if people couldn't go out and go to a show, then how do these organizations survive? How do these artists survive? And so we did a $5 million grant for artists that reside in Fulton County. And they could each get up to, I think, like $50,000 or so.
That was enough.
Yeah, to help get through
a grant.
Yeah, what we didn't know was going to be a 2-3 year COVID delay, right?
That was crazy. As an entertainment attorney, how has that been for you, being in the entertainment business as well, being an attorney?
Well, it's been good. I mean, Vince Phillips is my law partner. We've been blessed and fortunate. We represent Lil Baby, Kevin Gates, Scrappy, host of other people, NBA Youngboy. And so, we've just been blessed to, like you say, to grow up, right? We were in 6th grade with Lil Jon. We all met at Southwest Middle School.
Exactly.
Right? And then Vince and Cersei and Rob Mack all went to Mays. Lil Jon and I went to Doug. And, but we stayed friends, right? And we just have had those connections throughout the years.
Okay, so now back to the documentary again. For those that don't know, where can they find this thing, Marvin?
Okay, BoLegs, Marvin Arrington Jr. Atlanta Story. It's available on Apple TV, iTunes, Google, YouTube, Amazon, and Prime Video.
Now, I understand that this is not the only documentary as well, man. So, I mean, what else we got coming out the woodworks?
Hey, we got a couple more in the can. We got one called Pantheon, The History of Black Superheroes. Coming up next. And so hopefully we'll be able to get that one out by June of this year. And we got the soundtrack for this one and the soundtrack for that one. So
so now, Marvin, not only are you the Fulton County Commissioner, not only are you an entertainment attorney, but you're also an executive producer of music as well, sir. Break down the soundtracks to this thing, because I think folks need to know who's all involved.
Hey, well, we got some great people. We got Lil Will and Backbone on the title track.
Yes, sir.
Old Atlanta. It's doing real well. It's on Spotify, streaming everywhere. I'm still working on finishing the paperwork with everybody else, but we've got Scrappy, Young Dro, Quavo Gold, and Mook B.
What up, dope?
And so we got a host, Cool Breeze, Killer Mike, Bone Crusher, Cujo Goody.
It's crazy.
But it's relationships, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, a lot of times when we grow up, we have these rules and we have these things in our minds, and if somebody does this to me, then I'm not going to. Relationships are more important than rules. People are more important than rules.
Yes, sir.
Value your relationships over everything else. And the other thing is, with the documentary, we've got to do a better job of capturing these stories. I need everybody that has a phone or a camera to go record their grandparents, go record these stories.
Yeah.
Get that footage, get that content now,
Come on,
because we're losing people every day. 4 people from the documentary have died. Bonnie Jackson Ransom just passed. She's in the documentary. Larry Dingle, my Uncle Joe, and Michael Langford.
Yeah.
And so, we're losing people, and once we lose them, then we can't get those stories anymore.
Yeah.
So we got to capture those stories now. We can figure out the story, figure out distribution and all of that later.
Yeah.
But right now, pick up a camera and go capture every story you can.
Exactly. When you talk about that old Atlanta, Marvin, what was that 90s Atlanta like for you?
Oh, man, the 90s was amazing in Atlanta, right? Outkast and Goody Mob, TLC, LaFace Records.
Crazy.
So Def. I mean, and at that time I was in law school and started throwing the First Friday parties. And we had the biggest, baddest party in the city. And that's actually how I met Alex Get1 and AG Entertainment.
Yeah.
I incorporated AG Entertainment LLC for Alex back
in
the 90s, right? And so, but he came to me because he knew I was a promoter.
Yeah.
He knew I was in law school. Mm-hmm. So I was actually practicing entertainment law before I knew I was practicing entertainment law.
Oh, my God. What is it like when you see the trajectory of your classmates, though? And then even with AG, seeing where he went from being a regular party promoter to one of the biggest event promoters in the country. What do you think it takes to be great? What is that commonality between all of them people that you think allowed every star to shine?
I think it's consistency.
Okay.
It's consistency and determination and not taking no for an answer, right?
That's right.
And if you're consistent, you can succeed. People will know that you're consistent and they will believe in you. My law school classmate was Fonnie Willis, who's now the district attorney.
That's crazy.
My other law school classmate is a guy named Damon Elmore, who's the executive director of the State Bar of Georgia now. And so again, relationships, we go back to relationships, right?
Yeah.
Relationships are the most important thing in this world. And looking, like you say, at Alex Get1 and where he's come, right? Mm-hmm. And come from, right? He went from Thursday night at Yin Yang and Kaya to owning Kaya, to owning, a whole bunch of other clubs, and now doing concert promoting and touring. And so I think it's just the natural progression of people working hard and being consistent.
Now, I kind of got to ask you the same question, but this is, about Atlanta. Atlanta turned into Black Hollywood. Back in the day, you'd be watching TV, folks be like, I'm going out to L.A. to follow my dreams and chase it. What is it about Atlanta that allowed people to follow their dreams here and actually grab them and hold them and achieve them?
Well, I think it was, again, the intentionality, right? Okay. It was the inclusion from the government side, because the government had the money and the contracts. And once you get Herman Russell and Dawson and all these other people making real money, then they can spend money in their community and bring people on. But I can't neglect LaFace Records either. That's right. LaFace played a big part in that. I mean, Jermaine Dupri and Dallas Austin were here and they were doing well and doing good. Mm-hmm. But LaFace Records really helped put Atlanta on the map on the music side. Mm-hmm. And then that really, I think, led to this TV and film explosion that we're seeing now, because you have music, you got 2 or 3 things you can do with it. At least back then you did. You could put it on the radio or you could put it in a film.
Come on.
Now you can stream it and put it on the internet.
Exactly.
But that option wasn't available then. But I think the excitement and the energy and the industry from the music side help get us to where we are today. And like you said, Atlanta's the Black Hollywood. It's we got the best tax credit in the country.
That's right.
30%, dollar for dollar state tax credit.
What did Senior have to say when he was thinking, you know what, I was just fighting to get Ali to be able to fight in the state of Georgia, and now Tyler Perry just bought Fort McPherson?
Just proud, I think, of the progress. Yeah. Happy to see that, the steps that they took in the 60s, late 60s and 70s, when he and Maynard, and then in the 80s when he and Andy were in office, that those steps have yielded, right? It's like seeing your child grow up. You're proud, but you're proud to see the growth, proud to see the energy and the excitement. And, Atlanta's number one for everybody, black, white, whatever, you are. Everybody wants to come to Atlanta. And so we're, I guess I'm just happy just to be the beneficiary of all of the great work that leaders like Marvin Arrington Sr., Andrew Young, Maynard Jacksons, and others did.
When Senior had to shut down that courtroom to give everybody a piece of his mind, and he caught all of that backlash, what was he saying behind closed doors about that?
So I tell you, it's funny because he became the grocery store hero. Everybody in the grocery store was patting him on the back.
Thank you.
Saying thank you for taking the time to talk to these young black men and not just trying to throw the key away and throw them in jail and throw them away, right? And I think his intent was to say, hey, look, you can do better. I came from Grady Homes Projects. My mama was a maid. I had 7 brothers and sisters. And look at me. I'm now a judge in Fulton County. I was city council president. I ran for mayor. I brought the Olympics to Atlanta. If I could do all of that from Grady Homes Projects, you can do it too, but you just got to put your mind to it. So he became the grocery store hero, even though there was national backlash. I think people really understood what he was trying to do. In fact, I went to court in Cobb County in front of a white judge about a month after it happened, and the judge said, tell your dad I'm proud of him. I wish I could do the same thing, but I don't think it would be received the same way if I did. And so, I think his heart was in the right place, if nothing else.
It sure enough was. What do you think the disconnect is, though, between old Atlanta and new Atlanta when we're trying to pass this baton and this torch to the next generation to make it even greater than it already is?
I think it's the history. It's the lack of history. Like, you have people moving to Atlanta.
Don't even know.
All they know is Atlanta is this great place, but they don't know why Atlanta is great. Atlanta is great because of the steps that were taken by Marvin Arrington.
The coalition.
Yes, the coalition of leaders and people in the city that helped push it along, like Lonnie King and Louise Watley. And Lottie Watkins was a black female real estate tycoon, right? In the 70s. So, those are some of the other stories that hopefully we'll be able to tell also.
I'm looking forward to hearing all of those stories, Marvin. I'm looking forward to hearing all of them. Now, lastly, once again, for those that don't know, how can they go and get the DVD? How can they go get the streaming on Amazon and everything else? BoLegs, Marvin Arrington Sr., and Atlanta Story.
So the website is probably the best place to go. BoLegsATL.com, BoLegsATL.com. And we've got links on there for Apple TV, iTunes, Google, YouTube, Amazon, and Prime Video. And so you can stream it on all of those channels. But if you're old school, if you're real old Atlanta and you want that platinum edition DVD,
that's right,
then go to BoLegsATL.com and you can get that and old Atlanta t-shirt and BoLegs t-shirt and all the other items. A copy of his book. We got his book on there available for as well.
Okay. And how can they contact you?
So my IG is at Marvin Arrington Jr. MarvinArringtonJr. at Marvin Arrington Jr. And same on Twitter and Facebook. Actually, I think Twitter and Facebook at Marvin Arrington without the junior.
Yes, sir.
And then IG is at Marvin Arrington with the junior.
Also, I got to ask you, what advice do you have for that next generation of Atlantans trying to get into this civil, representation out here?
Well, we need more people representing people. Our rights are still being taken every day. We need people to be informed and educated. But that doesn't mean that you act a fool out there in the street with the cops.
Exactly.
Right? You argue in the courtroom. You don't argue on the side of the street with the police.
Exactly.
Right? you know, we all know what can happen if you do that, right?
You're gonna die.
Look what just happened in Memphis.
Yeah.
So you save your arguments for the courtroom. Right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Just say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and keep moving, you know, out on the street. But we need more representation. And I think that is really the legacy of Marvin Arrington Jr., the number of lawyers and legal minds that he helped train.
That's right.
And build through Arrington and Hollowell. His law partner was Donald Hollowell, who was Martin Luther King's lawyer.
Yeah.
So if you see Martin Luther King getting out of jail, 9 times out of 10, it was Donald Hollowell who served as his lawyer that was getting him out of jail.
My God. Marvin.
Be high.
Thank you, man.
Hey,
thank you so
love,
much
brother.
for the story.
No, thank you.
Anytime, any documentary, you know I'm here for it. Be High Radio shouted. Marvin Arrington Jr. Holla at y'all in a minute, man. We gone.